this time, this is the first time you used the word lies in your live stream yesterday. You wouldn't let me use it. You said omissions. I'm going to say this one you use lies. I've always said companies lie. So I think, although some people will always say this is the way it's always been, doesn't make it right. And it doesn't mean that it should be acceptable. So, Jack, I think some of that premise, and I'll let you rip off of that first, since that was something you made a whole show out of yesterday.
Yeah, because like you definitely, when, in my opinion, what happens sometimes, particularly when, as Keirsten, you're talking about, and Mark, you're talking about as well, where the times aren't that great. There's a lot of bad news out there, a lot of kind of angst and worry, particularly both for job seekers, workers, and companies. And then when you have that, when it's bad times, sometimes people do bad things because they feel desperate to get things done. So that and let's say for a company, if they want to hire, maybe they're not going to tell the whole full story because they got to get somebody in that seat. They don't care who's in that seat. So they're going to tell a nice tall tale about how everything is wonderful and the boss is fantastic and the company is amazing and the benefits are great and there'll be a big bonus. And then it turns out none of that happens. It doesn't happen.
Right.
They be polite, they exaggerated, but really lied about everything. So when it comes time for the bonus, they're like, what bonus? We didn't promise you any bonus. And you're like, well, yeah, you absolutely did. Oh no, I don't remember that. And it's unfortunate where you'll have the recruiters who are desperate and got to get someone in there. So they tell a tall tale of how wonderful things are. And then it doesn't turn out. So you have to, yeah, even though people are looking for jobs, you just have to have your antenna up and be careful. And you have to ask these like tough questions just to make sure that they don't say, "Oh yeah, don't worry, trust me, it's going to work out." Oh, I know it's not. I know it's not in the employment contract, but oh, trust me, you're going to get that bonus. You're going to get that raise. You're going to get that office. You're going to get that remote. Yeah, of course it'd be remote. And then because it's not in writing, then it turns out you don't get any of those things. Definitely it's almost like there's a caveat emptor, like buyer beware. So when you're looking around, definitely to keep your eyes open and make sure that if you could get it in writing, that's the best thing to do because this way you can prove it and say, "Hey, wait a minute, you said I could work remotely and here it is in writing and
Right.
I'm going to hold you to it." As opposed to they just verbally say, "Oh yeah, it could be remote." And then we've all seen this. Okay, everyone get back to the office. And it's, wait, what happened? What do I do now? I relocated and I took my kids out of a school and put them in a new school. And now I got to just take them out of school again and move again. That's so unfair. So those are things that
Yeah.
are really, they're bad. That's really terrible that these things do happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Kristen, are the HR minds playing tricks on us,
Yeah,
or
it's
is it,
exactly what Jack
are they
said.
strategic?
As he was talking, I was just thinking, get it in writing. Whatever
Right.
they're promising you, get it in writing. Just like you said, that's the only way. Be specific and ask the right questions. And like I said, if they promise you something outside of what their normal is, get that added to your offer letter or your employment contract. However, whatever you're signing your name to, get that in writing and you're covered.
Now, Kirsten, what do you think about this, especially with AI now, right? There's so many different AI platforms out there. So you have your agreement, right? You're going to hire Mark, right? And here's the employment agreement and all that stuff. Usually it's boilerplate. Now with AI, you could just change it and just say, okay, I want remote. So let's just put that in there now. And you can do it so quickly.
It's not that.
Oh, it is not easy. You can do it. We can do it.
I'm
Absolutely.
okay.
That's the way that people will hoping it will work out.
No,
But in reality, the sky is still gray.
yeah, like before that offer can be countersigned, it has to be signed by the company. So the company is providing you with the offer letter. You know what I'm saying? And there's so many addendums, there's so many clauses. Everyone is not in every letter. They have specific legal compliant language that they have to use. And I don't know too many. I hope y'all aren't doing this. Please don't do this. I hope y'all aren't throwing that stuff in AI and say rewrite it because That's not how it works. And again, if you're a prospective employee and you have taken your offer letter and asked AI to rewrite it, and then you sign that, well, then don't do that either. So
Well,
that's
Just
a
change it on
lie.
your
well,
That's
end.
a
So
deception, and
that's
that's a delusion in and of yourself. So don't do that. Please don't do that.
yeah, there's somebody who's probably already tried it and failed
Yeah.
already. But from the other side is that perhaps for a company to use AI, it takes having you'll have a lot less dialogue with somebody going back and forth. You don't
Yeah,
think it would
I don't
happen,
think the offer
but the
letter is
purpose
something.
is for to you.
I don't know any company, I don't know any recruiters who are using AI for offer letters.
I don't think knew that in
Yeah,
that
so
respect. But I'm saying though that a I'm just reimagining here. Just reimagining
mm-mm,
in the sense that
no.
they can use their. I'm not agreeing with that either, but they can use it. They use it for the front parts of interviewing already.
Well,
And understand that people to get over the hump to
messaging.
skirt some
Yeah.
budget costs that people are companies especially are going to start getting very creative in their use. And I'm just saying that in my creative mind and probably somebody out there, there's ways to take some of the emotion and human contact out of it by using AI in a way to there might be some customization and there might be some customization that's impossible for AI to use. So I understand from your point of view, you're saying, no, we're always gonna there'll be a human contact all along.
I don't
But
think
I'm
that
just
you
saying
can take the
what
human
if?
contact out of. First of all, you can't take the human contact out of recruiting. You just can't.
Okay.
And number 2, and anyone who tries to do it, congratulations, good luck. You're gonna have problems with retention. You're gonna have problems with attraction. You're gonna have problems with you're gonna have problems. Yes, you might be doing things quicker, but I think you're gonna be doing them more often. Meaning, yeah, you can get your job out quicker. Yeah, you can get your interview scheduled faster. But are you having to interview 27 people instead of 3? Are you having to refill these roles every 2 months or every 2 weeks because you keep making bad hiring decisions because you're not making the
Aren't
decision.
we?
You're relying on an algorithm or you're relying on predictive analytics to make a decision. There's certain parts of the recruitment process that you cannot take the human out of. Yes, data is great. We need it. We need it to we need it to predict outcomes. We need it to make decisions. However, there still has to be a human mind that's analyzing those things. There still has to be a human mind that's deciding what is and what is not the correct thing. And it has to be customized for the person that you're interested in hiring. I don't think that there's any way, I don't think there's any way that you could ever, like I said, take a human out of a hiring process.
yeah, I
It
don't
just won't
think
work.
with
Well,
the AI, I don't think the idea is necessarily to get the humans out of it. I think it's give you an example. I've been demoing a number of different AI recruiting platforms, and it does seem that it's going to be a combination of the technology and the human. So, for instance, like a lot of how the ones that I've been playing with is that you could use the platform giving prompts, having really good prompts, and having AI driven recruiting platform where you could find the people super fast. And so I envision what's going to probably play out is that maybe you'll have some younger people who are really good at doing all these prompts to find out the right kind of person that the hiring managers want and HR want and talent acquisition want. But then
mhm.
once you get those resumes, to your point, Kirsten, that's where the human comes in because you can't have an AI kind of usher them through the whole interview process. You need that human being to help out and work with the candidate and help what they should say, what they shouldn't say. So I think it ends up being like a little bit of a combination between the two.
Oh, yeah.
And
I 100% believe in high
yeah,
tech and high touch. And I
yeah,
definitely believe in utilizing AI and AI tools. We've been, like, they're not new. We've been using them. We've
mhm,
been using them for sourcing. We've been using them to give us reports. We've been using these things. However, there are now more sophisticated tools, whether they are specific to one task or one section of the recruitment process, or they're all encompassing. Like I said, like there's tools like Chronify that help you with scheduling. Like that's needed. Those are the parts of the process that can be taken away, that can make things more efficient, that can cut back on
mhm,
time. But with that time, you're giving it back to the human being so that they can be more so that they can be more high touch, so that they can be more focused and more deliberate and more empathetic and just better at doing their jobs. If I only have 8 hours in the day, but six
mhm,
of those I'm chasing down people's schedule, those last 2 hours, something's going like
mhm,
my candidates are going to suffer. Somebody's going to suffer. So when it's something like that,
mhm,
yes. But when it comes to like negotiation, I believe in prompts for things, especially from a candidate or from a job seeker perspective, like how to ask for things, like or even for a recruiter or a company, how to deliver, what's a better way to phrase or message something so that it doesn't sound so harsh or so
mhm,
that I'm not mincing words or so that I'm not sugarcoating something. Like, what's the most
mhm.
like diplomatic way to say something? Like, I believe in using it for those things, but I don't believe in like pressing a button and thinking that's how you get people hired. And with the offer letter, the AI in the offer letter is okay, this is a software engineer coming into this role in this department, and it's determining here is where they should fall in the salary range as it relates to other people. This is the equitable salary. This is the typical bonus. These are the standard days off. And there will be an if and. If these criteria aren't met, what other controls need to be in place? What concessions need to be made? What exceptions do I have to get permission for? What exceptions do I need to get approved to offer them 25 days instead of 20? You see what I'm saying? There's only so many things that AI can do without a human being deeply involved. So that's my only.
Mm, yeah. And I think in turning that around in retrospect to all of the points that you made, Kirsten, is the idea that job seekers need to take more of their emotions out of the process as well, especially when it comes to negotiating and responding to something that they don't want to hear or responding to something that's not good enough.
Yeah.
A lot of times people become too involved with their emotions and about their thinking instead of being more objective and responding a lot less emotionless. I'm not saying without emotion, but a lot of times it is playing chess in
Yeah,
essence.
like,
So
listen,
you're,
help
yeah,
me understand the benefits because even the benefits administrators don't understand the benefits that they're offering. When you
but
ask a recruiter, what percentage of my salary goes into that? We're like, come on, dog. We have our little sheet. We have our sheet with, again, predicting what people are going to ask based on past experiences. Like we give you a little thing and we go through our checklist and you'll pay this much a month if this, that. But there are, like I said, I would love to see, and there's probably some out there. I just haven't looked them up, but there's probably someone who's already made prompts for discussing your healthcare benefits or how to have the conversation around your particular, say your accommodation. Say you need accommodations and you don't even know how to broach that conversation and or you're dealing with someone who has never had to negotiate that type of thing or doesn't have the language to understand why you need these accommodations. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of things that we could be using it for as opposed to like taking away steps. You know what I mean? If that
Yeah,
makes
yeah. I think in essence, a lot of people don't interview with somebody who's seasoned enough to have a crib sheet of responses.
sense.
Most
Oh,
people
God.
interview, most people, most people have interviewed with people who are just as bad at interviewing
They
than,
are.
than the person who's being interviewed.
True.
So you got two very bad situations. Most people don't have that. So I think one of the considerations and all that is that everybody's still fumbling through this age old thing that we've been doing for many years now. And nobody said, man, I went to a great interview training as a manager. And I realized I probably heard maybe everybody I've heard maybe 3 or 4 people. I was fortunate enough to have some training when I first became a first line supervisor. I had some training. It was great. And I had a mentor to lean on.
Mhm.
But even at that, when you move on and you move on positions, that territory becomes a lot cloudier and you still need that training to be
Yeah,
ongoing.
that's neat. Yeah.
Having said that, is that and job seekers need to realize that person across from you probably knows much about interviewing you do. It's going to be who's going to be the better communicator ultimately, and who has the best information go forward to be able to leverage a conversation to possibly go on to the next round. So
Yeah.
it's everything.
Yeah, to go back to when you made a really good point about the emotional aspect, because I found out over the years that's a big challenge, I would say, for the vast
It's
majority
you.
of job seekers, because it's so easy to say, hey, it's only business, don't take it personal. But it's
Mhm.
hard for they do take it personal.
It
And
is personal.
and
It is personal.
yeah.
That's something it's
And that's what I think a lot of times where job seekers, or let's say if they're not going through a recruiter, they're doing it on their own. They end up sabotaging themselves, but not on purpose because it's a very awkward like conversation. So let's say Kirsten's going to be my boss, right? It's weird. Now I got to negotiate with her who's going to be my boss. And if I push too hard, she's going to think I'm a jerk. But then if I don't push enough, I'm going to get lowballed. So it gets you in this really awkward spot. And then emotionally, sometimes, especially now when you see these salary ranges, they'll give it's laugh. It's like a meme to this point, right? It'll be like,
Mhm.
from 50,000 to 500 million. It's like ridiculous. But let's even
Yeah.
take a normal, like, all right, from 100,000 to 200,000. So a candidate will anchor themselves closer to 200, even if they're not really there. But then if they get an offer lower, then emotionally they're like, "What? How dare you? You don't believe in me." And I can empathize with them to a certain degree. You know what I mean? And that's I don't know how to take care of that because that I've seen since I started recruiting for 20 plus years. Like it's very hard for people to distance themselves. If you're a recruiter from the outside, right, Kirsten, you could appreciate this. You could it's not you, so you could be more cerebral about it and not get as emotional involved. But when you're in the heat of that moment, it's really hard for them. And that's something we don't talk about enough, where things get blown up because it's just they feel they're being taken advantage of. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. And then to your other point, Mark, which is really smart, there's freaking no like, you'd never hear you're exactly right. You never hear, "Oh, company ABC has a program for anybody who's hiring, how to be a good interviewer and hire manager." I have yet to see they may exist, but
They
I've really never
definitely.
seen that, like a really hardcore program so that anytime an interviewer gets out there, they're really good at it or a manager is really good at that whole process. But oftentimes they're not. So then it's just really this is why you get all these people who are so angry when they're interviewing for a job because you could
Right.
tell like the people who are running it, they haven't been trained to really do it the right way. And I'm generalizing, right? It's not every single company, not every single person,
Right.
but it's enough that you just see anyway. You go on LinkedIn and you hear every day people complaining about these things.
I've worked at large
Mhm.
organizations when I was in corporate, and we always like that was for like first line leaders. It was always part of your first line leaders course. If we
What would they do, by the way? So what would like how like
You
what
had
kind of
interview
training?
training, you had training on how to write requisitions,
Mm.
You had training on like how to do conflict resolution in your team, how to have conversations about performance reviews, how to do and conduct performance reviews, like how to write them, how to
Mhm.
deliver the message. But what came later was that, especially for anyone we see now, especially when we're having interview teams, a lot of times if it was the person whose name was on responsible for making the hiring decision
Mhm.
who had to have the training. Like you couldn't get access to the applicant tracking system until you completed these steps.
How long would that take? Those
I
different
mean,
training
there
modules?
It depends. Like sometimes they were just online. Sometimes they were a notebook and you were like checking off that you did it. Again, sometimes they were part of an external, not an external, but like outside of the hiring process,
Mhm.
part of a frontline leader class. You just had to say, yes, I've already done this thing. They weren't updated as much as they should be. And as Mark pointed out, they weren't ongoing. And a lot of times people that were going to be part of the interview team, they didn't necessarily it wasn't necessarily a requirement that they had to be a part of those conversations. And they're more so for compliance, like the type of questions that you can't ask. How to do behavioral interviewing. Don't ask people how
Mhm.
much they weigh. Don't ask people how many kids they have. Don't ask people where they're born. Like it was those legal questions. It was more of a do's and don'ts. And that evolved into more of the behavioral thing. And then, like I said, it became a step in getting access to the recruiting system. And what happens when you don't have access to a recruiting system? Why didn't you open your requisition? And now your boss says, you got these jobs open. We're losing money. It becomes a revenue issue. That was the case, but I can understand how some smaller organizations don't necessarily have those mandate or have access to those tools. And then who's
Right.
to say that they're even good? Because where'd you get that interview training from? Did you buy it off the shelf? And it's like one of these old school, like they still doing those cartoons where it's hello dancing. This is Bob. You know how we had to take sexual
Yeah.
harassment training. We had to take where don't open these attachment. If you're getting an attachment from, hey, what's your name? Or hey, I'm gonna give you $1 million, don't open it. That's how like basic these kinds of things were. Yeah, it's out there and it's available, but that's another way for AI to elevate those types of trainings and those offerings and make the organization better and benchmark the level of interview acuity. Is that the right word?
Yeah. Because think about it, then the outcome is from all this, you have these cliche questions that really, in my opinion, really don't move the ball forward.
You're
So
right.
tell me about yourself. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
It
Walk
it
me
Yeah.
that
out.
was and I find that interesting that you should say that because I was thinking about a lot of people who do take the courses. I was fortunate to be able to get feedback
Mhm.
from my participation in these courses and things like that. So at least when you went, you got the training and then you got a chance to participate in the discussion or take a small test, but then also get the feedback for saying, we see you here or you're really this way. I remember one time I was told that they say, you're really a tough interviewer. I thought I was the lightest person in the room. But the feedback came back that I was the toughest person to deal with in an interview. And that made me change some things around. Had I not had that feedback, I could have possibly, and maybe before I did, had that feedback repelled people more so than make them more interested and make them more engaging. So we can go around and around with this, and
But
one of these days, maybe we'll have to come back to this. But
well, wait,
I think
can I
it's
just
go ahead, Jack.
for the feedback, Kirsten, I'm curious about your from your experience because what I find out is that when I first started recruiting, feedback was it was just taken for granted. You get feedback and constructive criticism to the
Mm.
candidate to help them get better. Now it's very rare. And then I think if you don't give feedback to candidates, then how like it's hard for them to then improve when they're going through the whole interview cycles. Like, what have you been seeing in that? So I'm glad you brought that up about the feedback, Mark. Like, Kirsten, what are you seeing?
I always elicit feedback
Mhm.
and not whether it's on an actual interview evaluation or in an email. Like I want it in writing, and I include those notes as part of the employee, a part of the candidate's their record. That feedback is important, and I provide them with anything that will help them. I'm not going to tell them. Every hiring manager is not going to give the best feedback. Every hiring manager is not going to be like. Some are going to say something like incomplete answers, and it's the recruiter's responsibility to probe the same way that the hiring manager or the interviewer should have probed in the interview to get a more complete answer. It's up to the recruiter to probe and say, what do you mean by that? Can you give me an example? Can you provide me with more details? Because I want to be able to give this back to them. And giving folks that, like, it really helps them a lot. Like I get feedback on on folks' resumes. Like I've told candidates, I can't, especially if I talk to them, I see something in their resume and then it's a matter of something simple like their format or they misspelled something. Like that's an easy fix. But if I see that they have the skills, and then I'm like, okay, let me just talk to them and see what it is. And then when I talk to them, they just didn't do a good job of explaining themselves on their resume. I give them that feedback and say, hey, before I submit you to the hiring manager, I need you to go back and put these things in there. And when you
Yes.
have a recruiter that's dedicated to you like that, which again, you and I, Jack, we've both been doing this for 2 decades plus. So those of us that are career recruiters, like we're doing that and we're giving people information. Now, I can't give every person that I did a phone screen with in-depth information, especially if you didn't make it past the phone screen. The most in-depth I can give you is why we didn't select you or why we selected someone else. They more closely were aligned with X, Y, Z. Perhaps you can come back and look at these positions, whatever the case may be. But I don't always get to give. I think the expectation is that if there were 10 candidates, that I'm going to be able to give 10 candidates all of that information. No, I can give 10 candidates feedback, absolutely, and I'm going to. But perhaps only
Mhm.
the top 3 are going to get that additional, yes, more feedback. What can you do better next time? What really stood out? What was great? And I always start with what was great before I give them what needs to be improved. Because I think they need to
Right.
know that. And then some people have a bad day. Like everybody, some people have a bad day.
Yeah.
When it's a matter of what I call a matter of taste, oh, they wore white shoes to the interview and it's after Labor Day. Knock it off. Like, what does that have to do with what does that have to do with their job? And I have told hiring managers, do not write that down. I'm going to tell you this right now. Don't write down anything that's discriminatory because we're going to have a problem. And
Well,
I'm going to tell
this
on you.
yeah, as always, as I expected, this turned out to be a great discussion. We didn't even get to topics and five,
Oh, wow.
but no, this turned out great. And actually, went asked what I thought we would go. Thought was going to go 45 minutes, but this actually turned to a whole. I'm gonna have to make
Quite
last.
quickly. I didn't realize it's not.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know, and that's why I love doing these. They make things go quickly. You're not depending on one person to give one answer, and then you're interacting and giving feedback to everybody else. So this was fantastic. This is we just got 2 shows out of this.
I really
At
think we
this
need to
point.
do a whole interview show.
Yeah, I love the interview shows, but the panel shows are where it's at. I
No,
think
no, I'm
it's
saying a
really
show
this.
on like interviewing.
Oh,
Sorry.
I have to.
What best practices
I'm
thing, like
gonna
how
hold you
to.
to that. I'm gonna hold you to that, Kirsten. You got to come back and do any
I'll
show with
moderate it.
me. Yeah. Oh, you're mine. Ah, okay. We can work that
There you
out.
go.
We can work that out. Thank you,
My
Jack.
pleasure.
Thank you, Kirsten. And of course, Kirsten, people can find you
At
where?
Trap Recruiter everywhere.
Okay. Trap Recruiter everywhere. And Jack?
You can find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, not so much on Facebook that much. But
Yeah, I'm no longer on Facebook.
nothing against it. I don't.
Yeah.
It's just like I'll post my articles and stuff. No one cares. But if I
Uh-huh.
post a picture of my cat or dog, I'll get like tons of. So I'm like, I don't know.
That's how it is. Somebody actually somebody who usually does videos. I forgot the name of the person. She filmed her husband with and without a beard. And that thing went crazy. She said all the other stuff I went to before, never, people watched, but this was the thing that went viral.
Wow.
Is this people are interested in who people are,
People
not
love my
always
business
what they
mullet,
do.
so I can attest to that.
Yeah,
I'll
I,
write something profound, but let me put up a business
I
mullet
am
picture.
all
People are like,
into
"Oh,
the
comment."
business mullet. Yes, I love that. Keep it coming. And make sure, and the wine, keep the wine going too.
Keep the wine
There was one
coming.
I meant to ask you about, but I'll hit you up.
Okay.
Anyway, if you were staying on my channel or my LinkedIn profile, I'm about to have like another discussion. It's not a panel discussion. This is more of an M&D Turner. Enjoyed that show. Thank you for
What's
joining
what's the
to this
topic?
show.
I'll check it out.
He's going to give 5 tips in how to position your personal branding efforts for LinkedIn in the
Ooh,
next year in 2024.
nice.
So stay tuned. This
Cool.
dude is so deep into LinkedIn. He's got like 150 changes documented just from LinkedIn alone in 2023.
He's all over that stuff.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's all over this. So I can't wait. Thank you very much for the
Thanks.
rest of you. And thank you, Kirsten. Thank you,
Thanks.
Jack.
You're welcome.
We'll see you guys
It's
next
great seeing you both
time.
again.
The
Thank
voices,
you.
Voices
Take
Job
care.
Seekers.
If I don't speak to you, have a nice holiday, both of you.
Happy
Thanks.
holiday.
Bye-bye.
All right, you too.